Hello, second grade. This is Miss Paget here with our second grade ELA lesson for the week of April 6th with your first packets that hopefully you got picked up at the school so you can work on at home. We miss you and are excited that you're working on growing your brain even while we're apart. So let's get started. I'm going to take my face away over here. Just wanted to say hello so that we can see the rest of our screen. All right. Here we go. So for our learning today, you need your packet that you picked up at the school, a pencil or something else to write with, and a thinking buddy. Your thinking buddy can be a brother or sister, a cousin, a grown-up in your house. And if nobody's free to work with you right now, you could definitely get a stuffed animal or a doll to share your thinking with. We're on lesson 6, ask and answer questions about stories. Get started with some think time. I want you to think, and you can share with your buddy what makes someone a great reader. And what do great readers do? Think about things that you have done on your own and with your teacher and your classmates at school to become great readers. One thing that good readers do is they ask questions. Good readers ask questions before, during, and after their reading. We know that sometimes we'll preview the book, take a look at the pictures and the table of contents to ask questions about what the book might be about or what might be going on in it. We ask questions while we read to figure out what's going on in the story and what are some of the most important key details. And then after reading, about why the characters might have done what they did or what we predict might happen next. Here are some question words we can use to help us while we're reading. We can use who, what, when, where, why, and how. Those will be coming up a lot in our lesson today, so remember those questions to ask while you read. Great readers ask questions for a few different reasons. First, it's so that they can understand the story. Sometimes things might happen that we don't really understand, so we might have to pause and ask a question and look back in the text for the answer. Also, it helps you enjoy the story because when you know what's going on, you can enjoy more of what the author has written for you. But we also ask questions while we read to find key details. We know that key details answer these questions, the who, what, when, where, why, and how, and they help you find the main idea of the story. Now, I know a main idea tells me what the story is mostly about, and so the key details don't tell me every single thing that happened in the story. They just tell me the most important things, the characters, the setting, the main events to help me find the main idea of the story. At the top of your packet is the learning target for today. This is what we want to learn and remember while we're reading. When you ask questions about what you read, answering those questions will help you understand the key details in a story. Asking questions as you read will help you find and understand the key details. Key details are important pieces of information, like who and what the story is about. Answering questions can also help you show what you know about the story, and we know we love to show people all that we know. All right, on the first page of your packet are these 3 pictures of a cartoon. I want you to take a minute with your thinking buddy to look at the cartoon and think about questions you could ask about these images. Maria and Pete went for a hike with Mom and Dad. They came to a wide river. How will we get across? Take a minute to tell your thinking buddy questions you could ask about this cartoon. You can pause the video if you need to. Now on the next page of your packet, then it's time for us to think and start using the strategy that we've learned about asking and answering questions to help us as great readers. At the top, it says, what are some questions you could ask and answer about the story in the cartoon? In the chart, write 3 more questions about the story and your answers. Good questions often begin with the words who, what, where, when, why, or how. Ooh, I noticed that this is an array that has two columns. The first column is to ask my questions, and the second is to answer. Now, I've changed things up here because we needed to make this work a little spicier to show off those things that we know. I know that who is in the story are called the characters, so I've changed this question to say, or to ask, who are the characters? And to answer my questions, I know that I always want to answer using a complete sentence. So I used words from the question to help me start my sentence. The characters are Maria, Pete, Mom, and Dad. It's your job to add the end mark at the end of that sentence. Now they've already given you one question. What did they do? So you can look back in the cartoon and work with your thinking buddy to answer that question. Now I notice they've already used the word who, so I could cross that off. What, I could cross that off. So now you can choose 3 more words to ask where, when, why, or how in the rows below. Take a minute to write your questions and come up with the answers looking back at the cartoon. Remember, you can always pause the video if you need more time to work or more time to think. Now, just for fun, because we don't know how this story ended or how they got across, take a minute to tell your thinking buddy, what do you predict will happen next in this cartoon? All right, now we're ready to read our first story in your packet. Make sure you're on the page that has the title Saving the Train. Here's this image. I wonder what's going to happen to the train. I'm already asking some questions about what's happening on the train, who might be in the train, where is the train going, how are they going to save the train? Now they've already told us up here our genre is an adventure story, so I know it's going to be exciting. You can follow along on the screen or on your packet while I read it out loud. I notice also they've given me my title. The author is Anika Peterson, and then on the sides, then they've shown me what my paragraph numbers are. Owen and Amy walked along the Green River. They had never seen the water so high. A storm the day before had brought heavy rain. As they walked around a bend in the river, they could hardly believe their eyes. The railroad bridge over the river had fallen into the rushing water. The noon train will be here soon, Owen said to his sister. It'll crash right into the river. We've got to tell someone. There's no time to get anyone, Amy said. We'll have to stop it ourselves. I have an idea, she shouted as she turned and sped home. When she got there, Amy took a big white tablecloth from the table. She grabbed a can of red paint and a brush. She painted the words, Stop! Bridge out! On the cloth. Amy dashed as fast as she could back to Owen. They could hear the train coming. They held the painted cloth between them and waved. But the train flew by. Had no one seen their warning? A second later, the train's brakes screeched, and its whistle blew loudly. It came to a full stop. Amy and Owen had saved the train. Now, because we are great readers and close readers, we know that it's good to go back and reread the text. So I'm going to give you a minute to look at the story in your packet and go back and underline the key details about important parts of the story. These are details that answer who, what, when, where, and why questions. So you're looking back in the text to find the answers to those questions. That will help you in what we do next. For example, if I was getting started, I already see right here it answers the question who. Owen and Amy are my characters, so I would underline them for who. Now I'm going to give you a minute to finish answering the rest of the questions on your own. All right, now what you just underlined in the story will help you on number 1. It says, write questions in the chart. Reread the story to find the answers. Write the answers in the chart. So over here, you're also in this column for asking questions. You know that you ask questions to help you as you read, and you can ask who, what, where, why, or how. Just a little hint, I see that here they have 5 question words and there are 5 columns. So I might pick one question word for each, 5 rows. I might pick one question word for each row to ask a question and answer it, looking back in the text for your evidence to support your answer. You can also go back and underline in the text to find your evidence. This can be done with a partner or a thinking buddy if you need a little help. I'm going to move on in the video, but definitely pause it because you will need some more time to ask and answer these questions. You're doing great work. Keep it up. Now, at the bottom or underneath this array with ask and answer questions, for number 2, then they give you a short answer question. They tell you to turn to page 97 to write your answer there because they've given you more space. So I'll give you a second to turn to page 97 and find the page that looks like this one. For your short response, that means you're just writing a couple of sentences to answer. They're asking, why does Amy make the warning sign? What happens in the first part of the story that helps you answer this question? Here's their hint. Read the first part of the story before you write your answer. So I might go back and read the first couple of paragraphs to find out why Amy made the warning sign. And of course, I'm going to check my writing, making sure that I'm using words from my question to start my complete sentence, that I have capitalization and punctuation, especially watching out for those proper nouns, making sure they start with a capital letter. This is going to take you a couple minutes and I want you to be able to focus. So I would pause the video here so you have time to look back in the text and answer this question. Wow, we've been working so hard. Your brain has been growing and getting stronger, but it's time to give it a little break. For a little break, you could do some stretches, jumping jacks, take a little dance break. You can also look up Go Noodle videos on YouTube or get the app on a phone or a tablet just to have a little break. Get a snack, play with a friend in your house, and then come back when you're ready for more learning. If you're finishing the rest of this tomorrow, this would be a great place to stop so then you can come back to this point where you see the little brain working out and pick up where we left off tomorrow. All right, welcome back. We're getting ready to read from the second story in your packet called The Climb. Go ahead and make sure that you are on the page that matches this one so you see the title and the author at the top. Now, just like with our story yesterday, we're using those close reader habits because we are great readers to think, what questions can you ask about the story? Underline the details that help you answer your questions. As a reminder, I've put those question words here for you. I already see at the very beginning that Grandpa is one of the characters, so I would go ahead and underline that. You can underline as you follow along with me with The Climb by Wendell Riley. Grandpa, look, I cried, it's a ship. I could hardly believe my eyes. There was a huge ship with tall sails far out at sea. We waved our arms and shouted, help, help. I'm pausing there and wondering, why is the narrator and their grandpa, why are they yelling for help? I'm going to keep reading to find out. We had been stranded on the island for weeks. I was out fishing with Grandpa one day when the weather suddenly changed. A storm blew our fishing boat off course and onto a rocky island. Grandpa steered the best he could, landing us on the shore. But our boat was ruined. We had no way back to the little seaside town we called home. The huge ship was the first we'd seen, and it was sailing right past us. It's no use, Sarah, Grandpa said. They can't see us. But they could if I was up there, I said. I pointed to the top of a high rocky hill. Grandpa looked worried, but he knew there was no other way. I had to climb the rocks quickly, but carefully, and not look down. When I got to the top, I shouted and flashed a small mirror. I was about to give up when a light flashed back. We were saved! I'm going to give you a minute to go back and check in the text. Make sure that you've underlined the details that helped you answer those questions to find the key details of the story. As a reminder, we're on page 96 in your packet to make sure you're following along. All right, it's time to think and answer some questions about the text we just read. First, it's asking me a question about where the story takes place. I know that when and where the story takes place is called the setting. You're finding out where the story takes place by looking back and rereading the story to look for those details and answers. Did it take place on a huge ship at sea, on Grandpa's fishing boat, on a small rocky island, or in a little seaside town? Number 2, what causes Sarah and Grandpa's fishing boat to crash? Choose the sentence from the story that answers this question. Now, because all of these answers have quotation marks, I know that either these are sentences that someone said or these are sentences from the text. Because they are sentences from the text outside of the story, they put them in quotation marks to show that they are sentences from the story. A, we had been stranded on the island for weeks. B, a storm blew our fishing boat off course and onto a rocky island. C, we had no way back to the little seaside town we called home. D, when I got to the top, I shouted and flashed a small mirror. Take a minute to circle the answer. What causes Sarah and Grandpa's fishing boat to crash? Once you've answered your questions, you can talk with your thinking buddy or share with them a how or why question about the story. Ask your partner the question and then work together to find the answer in the story and discuss why it is important. Right. You are using the space below to write the answer to the question that is on page 97. You're turning a couple pages to find your short response space. They've given you a hint. Review the sentence in the story to use to write the question. We're looking back in the text because our answers are there. We don't have to guess. We just have to find them. Short response. Read this sentence from the story. I was about to give up when a light flashed back. Write a question that the sentence could answer. Then choose another sentence and write a question for that sentence. So if I was asking questions about the text, what question could this sentence answer? I would find this question in the text to see what's happening and think about, could this sentence answer a who question? What, when, where, why, or how? Which kind of question would this sentence answer? This would be a great time to pause the video to look back in the text and then write another question and answer. Make sure you check your writing to make sure you read your question carefully, that you've put it in your own words, you've used proof from the text, that your ideas are in a good, clear order, that you answered with full sentences, complete sentences, and you checked your spelling, capital letters, and periods. Take your time to do your very best on this short response using the text to help you. Wow, we are now all the way through 2 of the 3 stories in your packet for this week. Way to go! Give yourself a little pat on the back. You can give yourself a little cheer, a roller coaster, an Oreo, whatever you'd like. And now it's time to give your brain a little break. So again, you can take a little dance break, a stretch break, a snack break, a go noodle break, whatever you want. If you're coming back to work on the rest of this another day, here would be a great time to pause the video because we're going to get started with a new story next. I'm proud of you. Keep up the good work. All right. Now this next story is called Operation Rescue Possum Before we read, I wanted to show you a couple pictures of a possum. You might have seen one before. I actually saw a possum in my yard last summer. I was sitting in my backyard with some of my friends, and we noticed a possum was crawling on top of the fence. It was late at night, so we could just see its shadow and hear its feet scurrying along the fence. So here's what a possum might look like along a fence. In the story, it also talks about a possum hissing. You've probably seen a cat hiss before when they feel in danger or mad. So here's a picture of a possum hissing. Also, before we read, they've given us a little hint up here at the top of our packet. So kind of them. Words to know. As you read, look inside, around, and beyond these words to figure out what they mean. We're using context clues to help us figure out the meaning of these words. You might know some of them, and some of them might be new. These words are operation, platform, and harness. Now, when you hear operation, you might be thinking about somebody having a surgery or having to go to the hospital if you break something, or you might have had a grown-up in your family have surgery. This is a little bit different, so make sure you listen. We know that some words can have more than two meanings, and this one certainly does. All right, let's get started reading Operation Rescue Possum by Sharnan Simon. One day, Jakey found a possum on the window well. "Hello, Possum," Jakey said. "You look stuck. How did you get down there anyhow?" The possum hissed at Jakey. I'm wondering why the possum hissed. Jakey's big brothers came around the corner of the house. "What you got there, Jakey?" they said. "A stuck possum," Jakey said. "We've got to get that possum out," Artie and Danny said. "Time for Operation Rescue Possum." They hurried to their workshop in the barn. When Jakey followed, Artie and Danny were already hard at work drawing up plans. "We don't want to touch the possum," Artie said. "It might bite. Besides, it looks too big to just lift." Artie showed Jakey their plan. "How will you get the possum to stay on that platform?" Jakey asked. Artie and Danny looked at each other. "We'll have to make a harness," Artie decided. "We'll clip the harness to a hook," Danny said. "Then we'll lower something possums like to eat on a pole and use it as bait." "Right," said Artie. Jakey poked around the barn until he found a nice long board. Artie and Danny were so busy with their plans they didn't even notice. Jakey dragged the board around the house. He slid it into the window well. Now Jakey waited. The possum sniffed the board, then poked it with one foot. Then it waddled up the board and out of the window well and into the woods behind the barn. Operation Rescue Possum was a success. Now the picture got a little cut off on my screen, but on your packet on the second page of this story, you can see a picture of the possum on that platform, on that board that Jakey got out of the barn. Now for all these questions, just like you already know because you're a great reader, you're going to be looking back in the text. When you read the questions, you're also going to be underlining those keywords in the question that will help you find the evidence in the text. That way you don't have to reread the story every time. You're going to use what you learned by reading Operation Rescue Possum to respond to the following questions. Number 1, where does Jakey find the stuck possum? A, by the house, in the workshop, by the barn, or in the woods? I see these words are in these quotation marks. I might look for those keywords, stuck possum and Jakey, to find my answer in the text. Remember, you can pause the video at any point if you need some more time to think or to work. Number 2, this question has 2 parts. First, answer part A, then answer part B. Part A, what did Jakey think of Artie and Danny's plan? He didn't understand it. He thought it was a great idea. He didn't think it would work, or he was afraid it would hurt the possum. Also, because I know you're so brilliant, you will already see some answers you can eliminate and cross out that you know aren't right to narrow down your choices when you look back in the text. Part B, write a sentence from the story that helped you answer the question in Part A, giving that text evidence. We're now on page 103, just so you're following along with us. Number 3, read the sentences from the story. Jakey dragged the board around the house. He slid it into the window well. Which question do these sentences answer? Who went to the workshop in the barn? Why were Danny and Artie planning to make a harness? Where did Jakey find the board he dragged around the house? How did Jakey plan to get the possum out of the window well? Which question do these sentences answer? Number 4, here's another question with 2 parts. Part A, read these sentences from the story. We've got to get that possum out, Artie and Danny said. Time for Operation Rescue Possum. What does rescue mean in the sentence? Trick, find, save, or catch? Part B. Underline the words in the sentences in Part A that helped you answer the question. Last question, number 5. Read this sentence from the story. Then it waddled up the board and out of the window well and into the woods behind the barn. What do you think waddled means in the sentence? A, the possum ran quickly. The possum walked quickly. The possum slid like a snake. The possum moved slowly. I'm also making a connection to other animals that I know waddle and thinking about what that means for them. All right, you're almost all the way done with your ELA packet for the week. Before we finish though, then we have one more question to write an answer to. Now, before we get started on this, I want you to notice first our question. How was the possum finally rescued? On this page for number 6, then they've asked you to plan your response. We know good writers start with a plan and a draft. So this right here on number 6 is not going to be your actual answer. This is where you're jotting down some ideas. In fact, they've used the word list. List key details from the story that tell how the possum was rescued. Because this is a list and a plan, I know I don't have to write in complete sentences because I'm just jotting down ideas. I'm going to use what are called bullet points, little dots to make a list, kind of like you might make a grocery list or a to-do list. Here I'm just jotting down a few things that I see from looking back in the text that the boys did to help rescue the possum. One thing I found is that they said they would clip a harness to a hook. Now, this is a little tricky because you'll have to look back and see, did they actually do this to rescue the possum or was it just part of the plan? But because I know you're so brilliant, I'm just giving you an example and you can figure it out on your own. So I would use those dots, those bullet points to help me list the key details that tell how the possum was rescued. Now, on the next page, where it says short response, this is where you're going to be writing using complete sentences. How was the possum finally rescued? You can look back at your list on number 6 to help you. For example, I took that bullet point, clip harness to a hook, and turned it into a complete sentence. I used a sequencing word to begin. First, the boys clipped the harness to a hook. I included a capital R at the beginning, a punctuation mark at the end. I have my noun and my verb to make this a complete sentence. Using the text and your list on number 6, write your short response to tell us how was the possum finally rescued. All right, last thing we're doing, tell your thinking buddy the answer to this question. Remember, we said our learning target or our goal for this lesson was to know the answer to this question. How does asking questions as you read and finding answers to those questions help you understand what happens in a story? We know that we're great readers, and so are all of you. So asking and answering questions while you read will help you understand to become even better readers. Take a minute to talk to your thinking buddy about this. All right, here are some of my students in Kentucky. So a special shout out to all of you and the rest of second grade reading books. So here are some next steps that you can take. Using what we learned today about asking and answering questions before you read, while you read, and after you read, we want you to read a book that you have at home and practice asking and answering questions. If you don't have a book at home that you can read, or you've already read all of them since you've been out of school, you can also look at read alouds on YouTube. There are thousands of books that you can listen to on YouTube, so you can still be reading even if you don't have books at home to read right now. Also, all of your teachers have office hours. You can check with the grown-ups in your house to look on the school's website or Facebook page to find the link where you can see when you can call me or Mrs. Cushing or Miss Langford or Miss Tabor or Miss Collins so that you can get help with your work or just say hello or ask us if you need anything or have questions about what your packets have in them. If you have a computer or a tablet, you can be working on iReady. Your teachers are assigning lessons on there to help you grow your brain, and you can be taking AR quizzes on the books that you read. Also, you can share what you learned today. Share with a grown-up or another kid in your house why it's important to ask and answer questions while you read. And lastly, don't forget to work on your reading stamina. See how long you can stay focused on a book to help your brain keep growing to get ready for third grade. And lastly, just remember to be safe and that your teachers love you and are sending our love. Great job today.